Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you may be, and welcome to today's event, a nuclear security country update, examining the implications of the Russian occupation of Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on nuclear security norms. I'm Christina McAllister. I'm the director of the Stimson Center's International Nuclear Security Forum, and I'm delighted to introduce our featured speaker for today's event, Valeria Hesse, who authored the issue brief that's the subject of today's discussion. That paper, How Doing Justice to Ukraine Can Help Win the Battle for the Future of Nuclear Security, is now live on our website, and I invite everyone to read it. But first, I'm going to welcome Valeria, and we look forward to her remarks. Valeria is a researcher at the Odessa Center for Nonproliferation. She's a research consultant at Open Nuclear Network and a management and research consultant at Atomic Reporters. Her professional focus is nuclear diplomacy, including international organizations and regimes in nonproliferation, nuclear risk reduction, nuclear security, arms control, and disarmament. Valeria is also interested in futures and foresight. She's a certified Prince 2 project manager with extensive experience in international educational events and conference management. She was also a visiting researcher at the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies. She was a consultant at the World Institute for Nuclear Security, WINS, and an intern at the Division of Concepts and Planning at the International Atomic Energy Agency, Department of Safeguards, and at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Valeria is also a Fulbright Scholar. She obtained her master's degree in nonproliferation and international security from the University of Georgia here in the United States, and has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in international relations from Odessa II Miechnikov National University in Ukraine. Valeria is the annual meeting plenary committee chair at the Institute for Nuclear Materials Management, INMM, a member of Women in Nuclear IAEA, of Young Generation European Leadership Network, of Black Sea Women in Nuclear Network, and the U.S. Black Sea Nonproliferation Professional Exchange. Valeria, we're really happy to have you here this morning, and I'd like to invite you to go ahead and share your slides and proceed with presentation related to your issue brief.
Hello, everyone. I am sorry that the presentation of all my regalia took so long. I did not expect it to be like that. Oh well, I hope you can see my screen okay. Christina, please let me know if everything is okay.
Everything looks great, Valeria.
Okay. So obviously, as you can imagine, for me as a Ukrainian who works on the topics related to nuclear policies, non-proliferation, nuclear security, the war has brought a lot of uncertainties and a lot of my attention to trying to understand how I can somehow help or what I can offer, judging from my expertise. And so this brief is an attempt to kind of offer my perspective as a Ukrainian scholar on this issue. So previously regarded as a state with the highest level and standards of nuclear security, Ukraine found itself hosting, according to many reports appearing on the media at the time, the most dangerous place in the world, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And Russia's invasion and occupation of the plant put nuclear security at risk. So the policy goals that I stated for myself while writing this brief can be defined as following. The short-term one is to avoid nuclear accident at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, or ZNPP. The medium-term goal is to end the occupation of the plant, which medium-term we're not talking about 5 years. We're talking about a shorter period of time, obviously. In this case, I thought it was important to emphasize this. And then the long-term goal is to prevent similar situations from happening in the future. And I wanted to give a brief note about why it is important, because our fundamental understanding of nuclear security has transformed in this war. As most of you who work in nuclear security know, many documents and the majority of attention was paid before to talking about nuclear security in the context of non-state actors that can impact it negatively. However, as of now, we are talking also about dealing with the threats coming from a state actor. And honestly, nuclear security affects a broader range of affairs. We know that it has ripple effects in the whole nuclear industry at the moment. The functioning of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the geopolitics of fuel supplies, and one more time highlighting the importance of energy security and diversification of suppliers. And in a broader sense, global security architecture, because this issue is just a part of a broader challenge for global security architecture. So unfortunately, we are observing the weaponization of these types of facilities. Just to briefly remind you, the nuclear power plant was occupied on March 4th, 2022. There is a typo there, not 2021. And since then, there has been more than 500 troops stationed, heavy artillery batteries deployed, and also anti-personnel mines along the shores of the Kharkov Reservoir previously, and within the perimeter, which is confirmed by the IAEA. On October 2022, in an attempt to formalize the operational control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Russia set up a state-run joint stock company operating organization of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And obviously, we all remember the March 4 first fear of when Russia ended up hitting a training facility really close to one of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant reactors, and the fire that broke out. And at that point, it was at all not clear what is going to happen with the nuclear power plant, and how safe and how close are we to a radiological emergency. So all in all, for the first time in history, there is a war-torn state with a large and well-established nuclear industry. We know that Ukraine has 15 nuclear reactors at 4 different nuclear power plants. And moreover, one of the nuclear power plants is occupied by a state actor. So the safety is, functionality of all systems from the technological standpoint. And of course, at the moment, the nuclear power plant experiences threat of physical damage by military action. But moreover, the safety also depends on the psychological state of individual operators, because in case they experience psychological or physical trauma, including, as we know, there have been reported abductions, beatings, coercion, it brings threats of failures and mistakes made during the operation of the plant. And in terms of security, obviously, the instability of a war zone is not a reliable security environment. And then presence of the unauthorized military personnel is the violation of the whole essence of nuclear security. And again, disrupted chains of command and emergency preparedness and response obviously are also affected. And again, according to the IAEA, here is the list of the things that the plant is affected by: the shelling, reduced staffing levels, difficult working conditions, frequent losses of offsite power, disruption to the supply chain, the lack of spare parts, deviations from plant's activities and operations, constant high stress and pressure on staff, and detentions. And here I wanted to also briefly bring your attention to something that I would call a hybrid nuclear compellence or instrumentalization of radiophobia, because so radiophobia is defined as extreme fear of ionizing radiation that was studied since the years even earlier, but like that peaked in since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and was really explored in depth through Chernobyl and Fukushima, and continues to be explored. And so basically, Russia exploited the socio-physiological effects of for compellence purposes, so of this radiophobia, by putting the nuclear power plant in danger. And it also sent a signal enhancing their nuclear resolve and showed that Russia has no fear of radioactive contamination, which is a different topic regarding their nuclear weapons threats, but it is related to this topic. And then the intention behind it was obviously to achieve concessions and to influence Ukraine's partners in weakening their support. We have heard and know how societies reacted to the potential of any radiological emergency happening at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants. And so this somehow, why I'm talking about compellence is because this somehow resembles the game of chicken that is used to explain nuclear deterrence, where Russians appeared irrational enough to risk a nuclear catastrophe to achieve some military goals. And basically, according to the game of chicken, the leader who seems more irrational and willing to risk more wins. So unfortunately, risk mitigation is complicated, again, because the formal frameworks for addressing issues related to nuclear security focused on non-state actors, and so system is not built to protect against state actors. Also, there is unfortunately no comprehensive legally binding international document addressing attacks on nuclear facilities. And yes, the attacks are actually prohibited under the international humanitarian law, the Protocol 1 and 2 to Geneva Conventions. However, the protocols are not ratified by the US, and in 2019, Russia withdrew its ratification, and also the formulation that is presented in the document can be subject to interpretation. There are also non-binding documents, but again, we already know that non-binding is already even weaker than any other legal norm that is binding. So there is the 2009 IAEA General Conference decision on the prohibition of armed attack or threat of attack against nuclear installations during operation or under construction, which builds upon previous documents, such as in 1985, the General Conference of the IAEA called on the states to individually make every possible effort through competent international organs for the adoption of the binding document, which would have been good, as we see now. Also, in 1987, another resolution authorized the Director General to assist in the work of Conference on Disarmament, which was kind of the expected body to conduct negotiations on such issues. And also in 1990, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution on the prohibition of attacks on nuclear facilities. The Conference on Disarmament reestablished the Ad Hoc Committee on Radiological Weapons in 1991, whose contact group B was to consider the prohibition of attacks against nuclear facilities. However, the efforts have been stalled, and partially because of the refusal of the US to include nuclear facility attacks under this whole framework. And then basically the efforts became stalled because obviously there was not enough political will in general to continue such negotiation. And so the failed initiatives, unfortunately, led to the situation where the international community at the moment was not prepared for such challenges. And then now we see how nuclear security influences international order and how the international order influences nuclear security. And if we go back to 2022, we can remember how Russia blocked or manipulated a couple of documents of global importance due to their references to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant occupation. For example, the NPT review conference final document, Russia was the one that blocked it. The IAEA General Conference 66 of 2022 failed to adopt a standalone document regarding the regarding the armed attacks against nuclear installations, as opposed to similar situations when such a standalone document was adopted. Also, the safety and security resolutions, unfortunately, were very vaguely worded. The importance of nuclear safety and security regarding peaceful nuclear facilities and materials must be maintained in all circumstances. And also, we again face the situation that all the documents that exist to date do not have an enforcement mechanism. Another important issue is that key security decisions go through the UN Security Council, and the UN Security Council was blocked by a Russian veto. So any sort of UN peacekeeping force is not capable of anyhow coming to protect the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. However, the IAEA, with its commendable effort, came to an ad hoc mitigation. So it deployed permanent missions at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and other nuclear power plants in Ukraine, and Ukraine lauded the IAEA courage and professionalism. However, if you have been following this, you must remember that safety and security zone initiatives that the IAEA DG proposed was unsuccessful, and there were a couple of things that are worth mentioning. For example, with relation to personnel, we mentioned it, how important it is for safety and security. The IAEA neither confirmed nor denied the allegations of torture of Ukrainian ZNPP personnel. And the IAEA also attempted to present a more neutral language in its safety and security reports on the topic. And even if inadvertently, this normalizes the occupation in the reader's mind and consequently sends a bias signal. And obviously, people can have a hard time interpreting what actually is happening. So with this all in mind, I'm coming to the concluding part of my presentation, where I would like to draw your attention to some action plan. So the short-term goal is to avoid a nuclear accident. It has become known that in October 2022, Ukraine made an unsuccessful attempt to retake the plant with infantry only in a amphibious operation, and they expected that Russians would not use artillery or any heavy weaponry at all, because it would have presented severe risks for the plant itself. However, the Russian forces began shelling the Ukrainians using tanks and artillery. And Ukraine was forced to retreat from the plant in order to avoid a nuclear disaster. And this obviously can become a dangerous precedent, because in similar contexts, different actors can try to abuse this possibility. And bringing attention to the fact that Ukraine has rights to retake its own territory occupied in an invasive war under the UN Charter Article 51, I would suggest that the warring parties need to privately agree that the plan's future will depend on the outcome of the surrounding military action. And the main point is to ensure that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is neither used to launch attacks nor attacked in the military action. The medium-term goal, obviously, is the end of ZNPP occupation. And in this sense, I wanted to bring your attention to the two documents by the IEA Board of Governors and the IEA General Conference 67 that calls for withdrawal of military and other unauthorized personnel from Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And also the recent resolution called for return of the NPP full control to Ukraine. Then, to ensure the end of the ZNPP occupation, we need to send the right signals. The sanctions against the Russian state corporation Rosatom and its affiliates have to be introduced, and their lifting should be conditional on the de-occupation of the nuclear power plant. Then also, in order to support these efforts, there has to be a concerted effort on diversification to replace the Russian market segment by other suppliers, which luckily is already happening. I would just encourage everyone to pick up the pace. Also, of course, there is a need to exert pressure in response to Russia's violation of the spirit of the IEA and reduce the influence of Russia within the IEA, which can be achieved through stripping Russia of privileges and immunities due to the systematic violations, including of the IEA statute, and first and foremost, the IEA statute. Also, expanding Ukraine's permanent representation personnel in Vienna to allow people more work power to address these issues and to work on more precise action plans and to have a better, sounder, louder voice. Also, increasing the share of Ukrainians in the IEA Secretariat. At the moment, Russians as a nationality have one of the biggest representations in terms of their nationals within the Secretariat. And also around 1/4 of the IEA leadership are Russian citizens. So a good way to introduce an alternative voice would be to increase the share of Ukrainians in the Secretariat. And also for Ukraine, it is important to engage with policy research community through professional discussions or a consultation mechanism for a more comprehensive overview, which options are available, and to create a more complex foreign policy. Not that it is not complex, but obviously when you can pay greater attention to smaller details, it can also support the efforts of Ukraine until for example, permanent representation can be expanded. And even if it is expanded, still, there is always, it is always good to have extra opinions. And then there could be an effort to, there could be an effort to set up a relief fund for nuclear safety and security for hiring Ukrainian cost-free experts and junior professional officers that could support these efforts. So the long-term goal should be preventing an attack against nuclear facilities. Obviously, nuclear industries have become much more complex as compared to 1977, when the last document, legally binding, was adopted. It is in the world interest to make a new binding instruments because, as we saw, the existing frameworks were not able to address the issues. However, this document must not merely state the prohibition, but also outline an enforcement plan. And based on the lessons learned from the war, I would say that there are the options can include immediate imposition of sanctions against the perpetrators' nuclear industry, or an authorization of instant deployment of IE safety and security mission to the victims' facilities, because we know how long it took to establish such a mission last year when it was the first attempt. Or another thing could be, instead of resolving or approving security forces deployment through Security Council, when it is deadlocked, to create a supporting mechanism through which such actions could be approved by the UN General Assembly. So, of course, Ukraine found itself in the center of international attention given such circumstances. And in my opinion, Ukraine could leverage this position to become a champion, a pioneer in creating such a legally binding document and kind of moving forward with these efforts. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the military takeover of the nuclear power plant is setting a very horrifying precedent, and the responsibility has to come for Russia for its violation of international norms. If Russia does not face drastic consequences, others may be willing to mimic such behavior in the future, and this is definitely not the situation we want to see ourselves in. And ultimately, as was exemplified, the key decisions go through the main bodies in international security architecture, and so that reform has also been overdue for a period of time. So, coming to the actually answering the question how doing justice to Ukraine can help us win the battle for the future of nuclear security, I can say that Ukraine prevalence against a rogue actor as a victim of aggression on its nuclear industry would benefit the international community. It would show that irresponsible nuclear behavior, which is exemplified by Russia, will not be tolerated, no matter who and how influential the perpetrator is. And this somehow can be called as pragmatic internationalism, which is a system based on the deep understanding and proper reasoning, which is very important, that enhancing security and prosperity anywhere in the world is not just a noble goal, but a security, economic, and environmental necessity. And with this, I thank you for your attention and look forward to answering your questions.
Thanks so much, Valeria. That's just a fascinating presentation and very, very great overview of the paper that's on our website. I again encourage folks dialing in to take time after the event to read the paper. We'll also encourage participants to submit questions. There should have seen a link when you registered for the event. And I believe we can put that in the chat as well. A link to submit your questions for Valeria. She's looking forward to some discussion. And so please do submit your questions. I apologize, we have here the typical Washington excitement on Connecticut Avenue going on outside my window. But basically, while we give some time to audience members to submit their questions online, I wanted to dive in. There's so much to unpack here, Valeria, and some many great thoughts and ideas. I think just to kick us off, you alluded to, one of your recommendations is to increase Ukraine presence at the IAEA. And I wonder if you can sort of dive into that a little more, give us an idea of what the current status is and what hurdles Ukraine faces, perhaps in increasing its presence at the IAEA.
This is a great question, and I'm sure that Ukraine would actually love this to be addressed. So there are several things that come together. One of the things is obviously that all international organizations are not free from political and budgetary influences, unfortunately. And so being given that somehow is taken into consideration, there has to be a concerted effort to overcome some of those issues. So there has to be a political decision, a political willingness to increase the representation of Ukrainians at the IAEA on both sides. From the organization side, not in terms of the secretariat, because obviously it's not like in the secretariat's power or mandate to decide on who gets to work there, like in what percentages, but it has to be a huge effort to support on the part of Ukraine's partners. And one of the ways could be, as again I alluded in my presentation, to set up an extra budgetary fund dedicated to support people like junior professional officers or cost-free experts from Ukraine on certain issues. Sometimes Ukrainian professionals are overlooked, even though they know exactly the types of reactors that Rosatom and people working for that operator could offer. So the expertise is there, and that could be an option also in diversification, because Ukraine has the experience and the industry that was established initially by the Soviet Union and basically a lot of the similar technologies present in the world could be tended by Ukrainians. Somehow also it can be that there is a language barrier for especially for people who have like more senior positions within the Ukrainian nuclear industry. At the same time, younger people have a different problem because unfortunately government jobs in Ukraine are not as highly paid, and a lot of young people either prefer to have some higher paying jobs or just are not able to afford it because, for example, many of the jobs are based in Kyiv. And if you do not come from Kyiv, you might not be able to afford the rent and your daily needs. So, and there is no JPO program for Ukrainians. So because I mean, obviously for Ukraine, it would be a huge sum of money to put into junior professional officers. So maybe a agency-wide program supporting such experts could be beneficial not only for Ukrainians, but also for many nationalities which have similar types of problems. And I know a couple of people who have said these same things for me. Maybe expanding Marie Skłodowska-Curie scholarship to include junior professional officers. Why not?
Thanks, Valeria. You've really raised some really interesting points and reminders about, the strength and size of Ukraine's domestic nuclear industry and the expertise that resides in the country and could be available to the IAEA and the international community. So, as well as the hurdles that the domestic constraints around that as well. So, there were some really great points that you've raised. I'm going to give a few more minutes for the audience questions to be collated and organized. And just press ahead with one more question for you. How could civil society, do you think, best support the 3 policy goals that you've outlined in your paper and in your presentation, and Ukrainian nuclear security efforts more broadly, perhaps as
well? So this is a question that I really, really love because honestly, I believe in the power of civil society because in the case of Ukraine, it is a big force that keeps the government in check, I would say. So I think if you will, it is like the third branch of power. Obviously, we still can develop this idea, but we see some signs of it. And so basically civil society globally and all the NGOs that work on these topics actually can focus their effort and help basically understand what has happened and what are the ways to address it. Because there are so many small details, including legal details, including, just the understanding, the interpretations. Again, I said that even the protocols state the initial prohibition of the attacks can be interpreted in many different ways. So all those interpretations, all those small details are beyond the availability of hands to work on them by Ukraine only. So talking, bringing attention, explaining things to vulnerable community. We know how important the information factor is. And again, as I said in one of my concluding slides, the proper reasoning, proper rationale, it's not because it's a right thing to do, but also unfortunately, humanity and politics does not work like this. You cannot just say it's good and hence you have to do it. You have to give proper explanation of what benefits it would give you. So that's civil society can help with.
Great. No, I really appreciate that. As you know, this is a civil society forum, the International Nuclear Security Forum, so it's helpful to know how our members can be supportive of this important effort. I'm going to turn now. We're getting some audience questions coming in, some great ones. I'm going to pose this one for you. Are there any unique nuclear security concerns at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, given the power plant's age? And the questioner says that all reactors are currently 20 to 30 plus years old. And are these security concerns compounded by the continued occupation of the power plant by Russian personnel? So a question around
I mean, obviously, maintaining security and safety of operation, it's more of a safety question, I believe, than a security question, to be fair. But in this sense, one of the things that the IAEA Director General heavily focused on is the availability of supply chains and prevention of disruption of supply of spare parts, because obviously such huge systems as nuclear power plants have to be maintained in proper conditions, and the supply chain problems probably are the main thing that would be affected in this situation in particular, of course, because of the surrounding military action and all things that kind of go from that.
Understood. Thanks, Valeria. I have another question here. The inclusion of digital technologies in daily nuclear reactor and power plant operations have become increasingly common within the past 2 to 3 decades. However, the inclusion of such technologies do pose cybersecurity challenges, along with nuclear security challenges, if such systems are compromised. Should a future instrument, as recommended in your brief, about preventing military attacks on nuclear infrastructure, also consider the implications of potential cybersecurity challenges at a nuclear power plant?
I would say yes and no. And I will explain the reasoning why I say that. Yes, because it's a valid concern. No, because it would complicate the negotiation process in the first place. So my suggestion would be, was this thing in mind, that you would need to negotiate the cybersecurity aspects. In the future document, include some provision where it would be specified that, it can be amended to include cybersecurity challenges or something like that, in order for people to have enough time to negotiate this aspect later. At the same time, the first and foremost focus has to be on the prevention of actual physical military attacks, and cybersecurity should be taken care of probably at this moment at the level of regulators, operators, regulators setting standards, operators implementing those standards, because I just think that otherwise the negotiation can bring us to nothing again and be super prolonged. And this is something that we thought we live in the digital age, but unfortunately the physical problems are still present, as we saw.
You're right, and an excellent point that these all need to be physical and cyber security threats need to be balanced. It's a lot to keep track of. Turning to another audience question, news came out this morning that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was placed in hot shutdown, and the facility has sprung a radioactive leak. Could you speak about the incidents that occur as a result of the changes, disputes of operational control, which is seen here with the Russians bringing a reactor out of cold shutdown?
I mean, obviously, this is generally not a good situation because somehow everything was fine until the nuclear power plant became occupied, and the world did not hear about any serious concerns with regard to the nuclear power plants. And when new people come to try to operate nuclear power, the nuclear power plant, excuse me, who are not authorized to be there, who do not know the procedures. And if you also remember, I alluded to like the change of command and the procedures that were in place. Of course, they all are disrupted, and proper emergency preparedness and response also kind of is negatively affected. And this has been brought up by the IAEA, and this can be resolved like the you know, disputes. So because of the disputes of the operational control, all these things happen, and this could be easily resolved with the deoccupation of the nuclear power plant, and through the restoration of proper control. And that is why the resolution that was adopted at the GC just recently focused on this pretty heavily, because no one knows a nuclear power plant as well as the personnel and the operator in a broader sense, who has been operating it for the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, no, it's a very stark illustration of the safety security interface. Another question here, how should operators of nuclear facilities in conflict zones be protected? What should be expected of operators in conflict zones, considering their precarious positions? And what should the state or another organization do to protect them?
Of course, we know what has been happening at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants. The personnel has been pressured to sign contracts with Rosatom. People have been pressured to take Russian passports. They were pressured, tortured for their allegiance to Ukraine. This is not something that provides for a safe operation of a nuclear power plant. This is a very sensitive, a very dangerous facility. In these terms, obviously, this one more time highlights how important it is to create this legal mechanism that would, kind of set aside the nuclear power plants and not allow presence of people who can, do these things to the individual operators. So namely military personnel and other personnel that can occupy the plant that could prevent them even being present there. And then people will be hopefully safe. I think that nuclear power plants should be out of the questions within military conflict context, period. This is not something to play with.
Understood. It does, as you say, it does refocus our attention on the need for an enforceable prohibition mechanism. Do you see any roles for emerging technologies for improving the safety and security of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant site, both in creating accountability for knowing what happened at the power plant and in reducing the risk of a nuclear accident or incident?
I mean, in this particular context, the only thing that comes to my mind is how actually satellite imagery analysis gave us the opportunity to like almost real time observe what was happening at the plant and what was stationed there and like what changes took place. At the same time, obviously, satellite imagery is not new technology. What is new is that it has become publicly available and for research communities as well. So technically, I don't see at the moment that the biggest issue with ZNPP is, application of emerging technologies in other senses. At the same time, if you ask me whether emerging technologies could be used to protect nuclear power plants in general, I would say yes, and we have to keep exploring those opportunities and those options. And I'm grateful that the Department of Safeguards at the IAEA actually organizes emerging technology workshops at the IAEA every couple of years. So maybe that is something to take into consideration for security, safety, and explore those options.
Absolutely, that's a great point to bring in those emerging technology workshops. I'm going to ask a little bit. I'm curious, what role should the IAEA play in any future instances of conflict and military action at nuclear power plants? Should their mandate be revised or revisited?
So honestly, obviously, as we have seen in this particular context, they have to play a very active role because even though the assistance missions are not exactly in their mandate, and this is where the IE Director General went a step ahead and his whole team. I'm really grateful for the fact that such efforts were made. I wouldn't say that the IEA mandate should be revised, rather expanded, but we also have to always take into consideration that any such mandate expansions come with costs and with budgetary pressure on the agency that has already been under budgetary pressure. Most recently, right before the general conference, they were trying to attract as much attention as possible to their budgetary problems because there was a question whether the agency could even fulfill its duties that are in their mandate as of today. So yeah, there always this budgetary consideration, but in general, we see that the IE has played a positive role, not only in just being there and helping maintain the safety and security of operations, was the advisory role especially, but also was some kind of mediation role, if you may. Obviously, not on an official mandate to do this, but a couple of positive things have come out of the IE being involved.
Great. That's very helpful, nuanced analysis there. going to turn to a question about fuel at the power plant. Has the supply of nuclear fuel to the plant been affected by the situation there, the hostilities, the security situation? And two, what is the situation regarding the spent fuel storage facilities?
Obviously, we all have heard about the spent fuel storage facility building being affected in the military action, and it brought attention to the fact that things really can happen, and Russia causing a radioactive release at the nuclear power plant is not something that we want to see. So this is why, especially after such an occurrence, the biggest attention has been drawn to preventing any potential damage to the facilities on site. And obviously, with the fuel supply, we know that there are international efforts to diversify the fuel supplies, and Ukraine has been working with Westinghouse for a couple of years, actually, ever since 2014, to have the alternative supplier of fuel to the Russian Federation, Rosatom. And as we see, it is expanding. This cooperation is expanding now. So a couple of weeks ago, the first fuel for the 440 VVER type of reactors was uploaded at the other Ukrainian nuclear power plant. So this has been going in the right direction. And moreover, we also see that Framatome, a French company, is also engaging into work to develop fuel supplies for VVER type reactors, which a lot of Eastern Europe has those types of reactors. So that is how I think the world is reacting properly to a challenge that came up.
Great. Well, we have just a few minutes left, Valeria. So if anybody has the last question to submit, encourage them to go ahead and pop that in the question collector mechanism. But it may be that we just have time for one sort of wrap up. And I'm curious how you think the Russian occupation of Zaporizhzhia will affect states' interest in pursuing nuclear energy. There's been there is a renewed interest in this, given efforts towards net zero and to stave off further climate change. And what can be done to alleviate the concerns of nuclear newcomers that this critical infrastructure could become a target during armed conflict?
So first off, of course, the Russian occupation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will affect the interests of states in pursuing nuclear energy. It is the situation even more drastic than the situation was Fukushima accident, for example, because not in terms of the actual radioactive release at this moment, but in terms of the understanding of weaponization of this type of infrastructure and how vulnerable the country becomes if someone is trying to intentionally occupy it. So we know what happened after the Fukushima accident. Countries got really concerned. A lot of them decided to significantly reduce the role of nuclear energy in their energy systems, if not abandoning it completely. So we can expect those effects too. However, we also have to bear in mind that the energy needs globally grow, and countries are still interested in obtaining energy sources that are reliable and that offer multiple benefits. For example, the small modular reactors could not only produce electricity, but also help with water desalination or local heating. So there are benefits to take from nuclear energy. And so I think that one of the things that we have to do to alleviate any fears is also to look into the future and see how was any new technologies for the newcomer countries that we develop. We include some kind of actions, systems, mechanisms, strategies to prevent such things happening as was Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And of course, creating a legally binding mechanism was enforcement strategies and precise plans of action in case something like this happens has to be one of them.
Valeria, thank you so much for a really excellent and very thought-provoking presentation, for your time and expertise in addressing questions from the audience. I think we're all very grateful for this opportunity to hear directly from a Ukrainian specialist in these matters. And I encourage, once again, everybody to read your article on our website. And once again, thank you, Valeria, and we look forward to seeing and hearing more of your research in this area. Thanks to all our audience members for dialing in and participating, for the great questions, and wishing everybody a really great rest of the afternoon or morning, as the case may be. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, everyone.